Well, what a lineup. For once, it's not all Zoes, which is nice. And we'll get onto these in a minute, some particularly rare EVs. But firstly, the first thing I should say is if you're not subscribed, please do so, because it really does help. The first thing I'm going to talk about is this battery module. So this is from the Kangoo, the previous Richmond charity Kangoo van. So if you didn't follow that one along, it had a low cell. The car was saying it was lower than all the others in the battery, and I took it out, charged it up and put it back in again, and basically it continues to drop. So I put another battery in that van and it's gone, and I've stripped that battery down. So this is the module with a cell that was draining. Now a few people in the comments said, oh, you could have swapped the position of a couple of modules, because we didn't know whether it was an issue with the balance module. So lithium batteries need to be balanced so they don't overcharge, because then exciting things can happen. So was it an issue with the cell, or was it an issue with the BMS draining that cell always when it shouldn't? So I stripped the battery down. I've sort of put in my storage all the other modules, but this is the one that had the low cell, and it's been a good few days. And if we check the voltage now, 29.5453, what I've written on there, 29.53. So this module, this cell that was low, which was continuing to drop, and module 10 has not dropped any further. So we now know 100% that is a BMS fault. So kind of interesting. The really interesting thing about that Kangoo was that Renault previously changed a module. Did they do that because it had a low cell? Weird, but did they... I'm just trying to think. Did they swap two modules over and replace the one with the low one? And then the problem was actually the BMS, but they put a module in it. I don't know, it's really hard to work out. That's kind of why, after all that faffing around, I just wanted to put a pack in it. Partly just so the customer can get it back, because it's been too long. But also just because it's really difficult to tell exactly what's going on, and it's kind of a limited number of times I want to take out a battery and fix it again and again. So, yeah, that is that. So we know for definite this module is good. When I get a chance, I'll strip this down and I'll recharge that cell, and then I'll leave it out again, and then I'll test it. Once I get it nicely balanced, I'll test it again just to sort of make 100% sure it's not being drained. And that could be used in another vehicle, albeit I've got a load of other modules. Got loads and loads and loads of modules now. So, rare EVs. So, as you probably worked out, partly from what's written there, this is a G-Whiz. Firstly, I have to say a massive thank you to Alex from Going Green. And Going Green are the guys who imported these vehicles, and they do loads of maintenance. And people kind of like love to hate these, I think. You know, make a few jokes about them. But you've got to remember with the G-Whiz, they started being sold in the UK in about 2003. Okay, you know, which is 13 years before this. You know, it was really early. There wasn't really any public charging, certainly not Type 2. It just, you know, the electric vehicle industry, it didn't really exist. And people have kind of said that Going Green, the company that imported them, you know, they invented the EV industry. And I think I could probably agree with that. So they might seem a little bit odd, these cars, but it was really early. In 2006, this was the world's best-selling electric vehicle, which probably says more about 2006 and the state of the EV industry than it does about this vehicle, I reckon. But yeah, more than 4,500 were sold worldwide and 1,400 in the UK, so good work Going Green. So what is this and why have I got it? Well, the G-Whiz came in a few variants, and this is one of the original ones. So this is an 05. So yeah, it's 21 years old. I really like it. I think it's cool. Some people like them. My wife is, I have to say, not totally convinced, but this is mine. It's not a customer vehicle. Let's have a look at the technology in a G-Whiz. So yeah, so I said this is one of the original first iterations. This is how they came out back in 2003. So it's got 8 6-volt lead acid batteries. They're about 200 amp hours at C20, if that means anything to you. It's got a DC motor, big fat motor under the rear axle. So yeah, oh, you can see the motor there, little reduction box. Yeah, you can see it's kind of got 2 cables there. Yeah, and that's its diff reduction box. And yeah, and a DC controller. It's a real basic tech. If you've seen like electric forklift trucks, that's pretty much the same. That's your controller and some various ECUs and gubbins and things, onboard charger and DC-DC converter under there. So later on, they did upgrade this. They put in an AC motor and they did do a lithium version. You could get one with air conditioning as well. Although, if you look at the pictures, the air conditioning is actually done with a normal AC pump from a fossil car that's designed to run with a belt, and they just put an electric motor on the side of it, which is quite cool. But the G-Whiz was made in Bangalore in India, and I'm fairly sure I can say that it's probably the best electric vehicle to come out of Bangalore. But this G-Whiz, in its original form, as it came out, the first iteration of it, it's got a 4.5 kilowatt motor, which is about 6 horsepower. It can do 13 kilowatts peak performance, which is about 17.5 horsepower, and about a 40-mile range at about 40 miles an hour. I hope you can hear me. I've got my fluffy microphone on, but it is a bit windy. Yeah, so you know, not a massive range. These batteries are obviously a bit tired, but massive thanks to Going Green for just kind of like getting me a working vehicle together, which is exactly what I wanted. So the range wasn't amazing, but they sold quite a few of them. And why was that? Well, obviously EVs were a different thing, but these were sold a lot into London, and in inner London, if you try to drive anywhere, it's an absolute nightmare, and you just don't go very far, and you don't go very quickly. And with these, they did free parking. They set up charge points for them, so you could have free charging, free parking, and they were just a little town car. You know, people are buying the AMI now, the Citroen AMI, and saying it's great. It's just one of these, just made to look a bit more funky. So yeah, they did upgrade it later, more range, more top speed, and then the company, so it's Reva, the original company that made these. Another company, Mahindra, bought Reva, and they kind of really updated it, and they produced what's called an E2O, which is a more modern, but still a quadricycle, because these are a quadricycle rather than a car. So they then brought that E2O to the UK in 2016, but actually sales were just not very good, basically, and they stopped production in 2016 and actually bought them back, although there are still a few in the UK, but they did buy back quite a few. And that's just because by 2016 EVs had just moved on. You know, that's a 65 plate, so why would you buy something that's a quadricycle and very much old tech when there's brand new stuff that's come out? You wouldn't, basically, and that's why they were kind of withdrawn from sale. But this is really cool, I like it. But what is it for? So what I wanted this for, oh actually I meant to get a prop out, which I will go and get. Hold on. Okay, the prop has been retrieved. So this G-Whiz is replacing this, basically, and this is my kids' electric quad. So the kids have got bigger. This is a bit slow. You can't, they've got a little trailer they tow with it, but you can't move too much stuff around, and it's just kind of useful to have something that can tow a bit more. So this as a car now, especially with those batteries and being the old tech, it's not very good. But as a vehicle just to tow things around, low maintenance, something that's just going to keep going, the performance isn't going to be amazing, but that's not what I want, because the performance is a lot better than that. Yeah, the kids are too big for this now, and that's really what it's for, to replace this, to tow things around. This one did have lead acid batteries originally, but it's now actually got some cells from a Prius, and I've got 3 of those packs I made up, because those cells, they're kind of not good enough to go in a car, but good enough for an 800 watt quad. But yeah, that's 800 watt, and that's 4.5 kilowatt continuous. So that is fantastic for what I want it for. If you want to drive around and commute in it, not that great now. And that's had about 3 battery packs fitted. It's one of the big downsides with the lead acid. If you get 1,000 cycles out of them, you're doing really well. You know, so if you're using it quite regularly, the battery pack is not going to last many years, couple of years. But a really interesting vehicle. The other thing I'm going to use it for is moving cars around. So I quite often need to pull cars around because they're dead, because that's why they come to me. And I thought about having a winch and all that kind of stuff, but what do you mount it on? And I saw a picture of someone who'd got a G-Whiz and taken the body off it, so it kind of just like seats and a metal frame. It looks like a roll cage when you get all this plastic off. And he'd put like foam over it, and yeah, he just used it like on his farm for towing stuff around. And that's kind of what I want to do with it, but with the added advantage that if I put a winch, so this is the bonnet, if I mount a little hand winch, you know, like the kind when people get their boat out of the water and the boat trailer's got a little click, 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 click winch, hand wind winch on it. If I can mount that, there's one bar there and there's another metal bar in there, a slightly bigger one. If I can mount a little hand winch in there, when I get a Zoe, it's dead and it's been dropped off by a truck, you know, especially when it gets the wheels in here and it's a couple of inches down, really hard to push. Whereas if I have a G-Whiz, I can give it a tow, and that'll be cool. And I'll be back in a moment. Okay, apologies. The Asda truck came. It's very rock and roll around here. Yeah, so I'm going to put a winch on here because this is going to be really useful for pulling Zoes, especially when they're in a slight dip. If you're pushing a car, if there's like a really small incline, it makes it blooming hard work if you ever pushed cars around. Whereas to have a winch, it's just going to make that a lot easier, basically. And if it's mobile, and this probably weighs, with the batteries, about 600 kilos. The battery's obviously really heavy, but that's kind of an advantage if you want to use it as a mobile winch. So as a general sort of workshop utility vehicle slash, the kids can do donuts in the field and sort of like tow things around. And yeah, my son's got some great plans of what he's going to do with it. And yeah, it, as a car, as I said, not very good, but much better than that when the kids are a bit bigger. So the other thing I must say is, if you think Tesla invented the frunk, no way. 2003, massive frunk. Obviously not a lot under here. Washer fluid, brake fluid. Yep, there's a steering rack there. There's the floor. Yeah, but I think it's really cool. Really, really cool. And it's something I've not had my hands on before. And I'm a fan of EV. You know, especially the rare ones. That's a kind of I quite like the rare and interesting ones. And yeah, I just think it's cool, really. So these batteries, basically Going Green kind of threw me a pack together out of what was available. It's got really windy all of a sudden. But yeah, so that's what I've got. So hence there's a mix. So these are UASA cells and these are the Trojan ones. So these are kind of the classic original Trojan cells. That's what your MIEV would come with. And if you bought kind of the best to replace beers, lead acid, so it's not amazing. But yeah, if you were going to replace your G-Whiz batteries, this is what you'd put in them, basically, with being the lead acid version. Those ones can basically be overcharged and are a lot more tolerant to it than the UASA ones here. So with these G-Whizzes, the charging is kind of interesting. So I should show you, actually. Let me show you the charge point. So it's got a commando socket. Obviously, this being really early EV, Type 2 just hadn't been invented, basically. And what you basically do, you plug it in with a commando socket, and when it does a full charge, sometimes it will do a like a balancing phase at the top, equalization it calls it for the G-Whiz. It's basically a controlled overcharge. You let the higher ones boil off a bit of acid, the lower ones come up, and then you'll see all these pipes. And what there is here, this is a watering point. I'm not joking, look. Distilled water only, filled distilled water only after charging. And that distilled water literally tops up the batteries because the higher ones will have literally bubbled off some acid. And you fill it up with distilled water. Quite cool. So yeah, I'm going to need to top these batteries up. I've only got a little pot of distilled water, so I'll probably just do it directly in the cells, and I've looked up how much you put in. I don't need loads of water in here, basically. And it's not going to get many full charges. I'm going to give it a good charge now, but yeah, beyond that, it's just going to kind of get topped up. So once I've got them topped up, it's not really essential. And this is an old pack. Realistically, this is no good for the road, but just for 3 laps of a field and towing some supplies around, it's absolutely perfect. So this G-Whiz wasn't worth a whole lot, and that's for a couple of reasons. Partly because there's certain things that go wrong and cost kind of too much to replace. So one of it's the battery pack. So that it's lead acid and quite limited and not amazing, still reasonably expensive to replace. So that kind of makes this vehicle not worth a whole lot. The other thing is the onboard charger, I should say. That's just pinged off. 1 moment. I'm just going to put that here back on. Right. So under here, that is the onboard charger, and that has failed. There used to be a replacement charger that Going Green could get, but they were really hard to get, and basically that's kind of like writing off these vehicles, which is a shame, but it's kind of old tech now anyway. There is a guy actually that does lithium upgrades for these, and the lithium is much lighter, obviously, than the old lead acid. Interestingly, so that is a 48 volt lead acid, it's got 8 6-volt cells. This is about 30 volts, so I could actually use 2 of these, and that would give me 6 kilowatt hours, and that's actually equivalent. So 2 of those is equivalent to this lot in terms of energy capacity, and the performance will be miles better, and the number of cycles will be miles better. But that's just how technology's come on. But if you want bulletproof reliability, you know, you want something that's not going to be amazing, but it is going to work. Yeah, this is pretty cool, and I've stuck with this. And I got Going Green to just kind of throw me a pack together, because if I'm going to put modules in it like this, which I may do one day, but I'm going to need to add a BMS and change the charging and stuff like that. So this is kind of just going to get us up and running, which is cool. So the onboard charger doesn't work. This is my replacement charger. So this is a charger from like a mobility scooter or a like a little moped, 48 volt moped. So it's just putting out 58 volts at 5 amps, so not massively powerful, but I don't need it to charge very quickly. Plus this is an old pack, so I don't want to hammer it. It's not really going to do equalization, hence I've got all these clips on, because I've got some additional chargers charging certain cells and things just to bring them up, and I had a little like couple of bulbs as well to bring down some of the high ones. So I'm just getting it in a usable state, and that is cool. There is more powerful chargers you can get, but not as powerful as the original on board. But it kind of just depends, you know, it depends what you want. I don't need amazing performance, I just need the thing to work, and it is going to do so. And I'm going to get a tow bar. Obviously there's no tow bar, you can't buy a made tow bar for it unless someone's made one, but yeah, a few people have sort of made them, and I'm going to get one. So that is rare vehicle number 1, so that's cool. Never had one of those before. This is rare vehicle number 2. So this is the white van. It is a Peugeot Partner, although Citroën made them as well. Now, this is a particularly rare vehicle. So early in the sort of history of EVs, so we're talking like 1998, PSA came up with a van which had NiCad cells, and you had to water them, and it was a generation 1, and this is kind of the generation 2. So 1998 to 2005, yeah, 160 volt 16 kilowatt hour pack in this first generation. Didn't have a lot of power, 37 horsepower. It was basically limited to like council fleets and power companies for using around their sites, that kind of thing. It was really a road prototype, although there was actually a passenger version. It only had a range up to about 60 miles because it had 16 kilowatt hours from its 160 volt wet NiCad pack. But one of the guys I did a Zoe, I think it was a motor rebuild for, his dad came with him, dropped him off to collect his Zoe, and his dad had mentioned that he'd had one of the first generation ones of these. They called the electric ones. They did the van version. I think they did a Saxo as well, Citroën Saxo. So yeah, not amazing, but yeah, interesting anyway. So that was the first generation of the Citroën Berlingo and Peugeot Partner. The other interesting thing is that around that time, that sort of 2005-ish, electric vehicles, the range wasn't amazing, obviously. You had these fairly limited range, And then in about 2009, 2010, the Mitsubishi i-MiEV came out, which is a little sort of round kind of car, developed by Mitsubishi. Peugeot and Citroën sold a branded version of it as well. And then subsequently, Peugeot and Citroën and Mitsubishi worked on this vehicle, and this is the second generation electric Citroën Berlingo or Peugeot Partner. This is known as a b9e. And this was not a very popular vehicle. This was kind of an interim where they were getting a bit better, but they weren't great. So the drivetrain in this is made by Mitsubishi. Being very Mitsubishi and very Japanese, it's got Type 1 charging on it. But also, if we go around this side, it has got CHAdeMO. Quite cool for 2016. So 22.5 kilowatt hour battery pack. The battery pack in this, about 100 mile range, the battery pack in this is split into two packs effectively. So it's got like two half packs. And if we look underneath, I'm just going to move my hand, try not to lose my piece of paper. So there's a pack here, because you can see this plastic cover. If we go down here, which ends about there. So there's, one big pack there. And then you can see there's the beam between the rear wheels. There's another pack there. So real quirk on this vehicle, you can see some of the cabling in there, a bit of it. But yeah, real quirk that this electric vehicle, the battery pack, is actually split into two parts. Bit of an odd one, but yeah, interesting. So I'm going to have a better look at that if I can. So this vehicle, I said it wasn't very popular. So yeah, in 2016, according to Wikipedia, worldwide sales were 491, with 19 sold in the UK. I think that's the all-out sales. It really wasn't mega popular, but yeah, I am excited because I haven't seen one before. So let's have a little bit of a look under the bonnet. Obviously, after this, the kind of third generation, sorry, that's hard to do with one hand, the sort of third generation is the Stellantis, much more modern vehicles. You can kind of see it's a conversion because you get odd things like this. So where you've got different kind of drivetrain meshing into sort of existing vehicle systems. You can see there's a Japanese influence with the parts. Yeah, it's kind of fascinating how sort of, how interesting some of it is, like the cable there, just uncovered. Yeah, we'll just make that uncovered. You know, yeah, kind of fascinating, really. So this, it's owned by a courier company that I fix lots of Kangoos for. And I think it's got a reduction box fault, although I've driven it a little bit, just kind of up and down my lane. Pardon me. And seems to be all right. So I need to take it a bit further and see what happens. But yeah, this is when the van's got much better. Very similar underneath to a Mitsubishi i-MiEV. It's got a range of about 100 miles. If we fire it up, yeah, it reckons it will do about 27 miles, but we've not got quite half. I mean, 100 miles when it was new, it is 22.5 kilowatt hours. It's 10 years old, so yeah, maybe the range is now, well, it's not going to be 100 miles, is it? Even if the manufacturer said 100 miles, yeah, it is shaped like a van, which is kind of like a brick with a pointy front. And it might have been realistically 70, 80 when it was new. Will it now do 50 miles on a charge? Yeah, interesting. So this has got the, if you know your MiEVs, you'll know your Yuasa cells. Oh, I've got a Yuasa cell. One moment, please. Right, here we are. So this is a Yuasa cell out of a Mitsubishi i-MiEV, and this vehicle has cells very similar to this. So these were used a lot by Mitsubishi. So used in the i-MiEV and then used in the Outlander as well, slightly smaller ones. And yeah, it's got basically a load of these. It makes a farty noise, this. I think it's the brake booster, but yeah, I left it running. But yeah, it's got these, which are not very energy dense, but pretty much bulletproof, last really well. Kind of early version of lithium, you know, not amazing performance, but pretty reliable. So yeah, so this vehicle is immensely rare. It's got about a 50 kilowatt motor, which is about 65 horsepower. So whereas that really early, you know, Berlingo or Peugeot Partner, the electric one, whereas that had a real low power, 37 horsepower. This one is much better, much more usable, range a little bit limited, but just didn't sell that well at all. I suspect they were horrendously complicated, but yeah, quite cool really. So yeah, I'm quite liking this van. I just find it quite fun to kind of play with things that are, when I say play, I mean fix. Yeah, just to work on stuff that's just quite rare, really. I just find that quite interesting. So yeah, it's pretty cool, really. Nice funky knob for selecting the the gears, or the way you want to move, as it were. But yeah, I'm going to take this for a bit more of a drive and see what's wrong with it. With the sales being so low of this vehicle, there's no way I'm going to find the second-hand box for it. So not exactly sure I'm going to fix it, or how I'm going to fix it. There's probably a way, a replacement, and the dealer's not going to be able to find me a replacement reduction box for this, are they, realistically? 10-year-old, really low production vehicle, but we'll see what we can do with it anyway. So yeah, I'm going to take this for more of a test drive. So yeah, the company who had it, courier company, said that they thought the reduction box was having an issue, and that it was sort of jerking to one side. They're not actually flashing, I think. Just when I move this, they look like they're flashing on the camera. Yeah, they thought it was jerking, but yeah, I didn't experience that. But I'll take it for a bit of a faster drive and see what happens. But yeah, hope that was interesting. So yeah, it's been a bit of a funny couple of weeks. I've been doing Zoe's like one after another, and it's got a bit silly, really. And getting the G-Whiz, it's kind of just given me an opportunity just to take a little bit of a pause and just do something a little bit different. And I kind of just wanted to finish off by saying, sort of look after yourselves. Obviously things are going reasonably well for me. I'm getting lots of inquiries, which is great, and lots of people are in businesses like that where you're self-employed and you just want to do the work when it comes in, but you've still got to look after yourself. I was getting to the point where I was having a little bit of an issue with my hand, with it being sort of stiff, a little bit painful in the evenings, and it's just the continuous working. You can't repeatedly do the same thing. So yeah, have fun, but look after yourself. So I've had the last sort of day or so playing with the G-Whiz. Yeah, just getting it sorted out. It needed a good clean inside. Actually, in the front, let's just knock this off and then I'll show you inside. So under the front footwells, it actually had plywood, and that plywood was not really in a good condition. So where this blue board is, normally this would be sort of 2 layers of plywood, but I've replaced it with this board that will be held in place when the seat is bolted in. I might like silicone it or gasket seal it as well. But yeah, this board is the kind of like something I had lying around. It's where you go to like a leisure centre where you got the toilet cubicles, there's just like a thinnish board between each toilet cubicle. So that's what this board is. It's like a plastic resin type board. It's about 8mm thick, but really, yeah, it just does not rot. It was actually used on like a kid's playhouse roof for about 8 years, and it's still been hanging around in the garden because the playhouse rotted away, but it's still there. So yeah, really, really good. I've mixed cement on it and all that kind of stuff, and now I've cut a piece out of it to use for this. And this will probably outlast the G-Whiz as well. It just gets smaller and smaller each time you do something with it. But yeah, there's a couple of beams that run under here as well, which I packed out with a little bit of this. But yeah, that's pretty good. Someone's a bit more fixing that one, but other than that, it's good. So yeah, we shall see what happens. So a little bit of fun, but you've got to have some fun. That's kind of what I worked out I was missing a little bit. So yeah, it's all good. Cool. Right. Well, I think that will do for today. Thank you very much for watching. Any comments on what I can do with the G-Whiz or cool stuff? I need to fix the aerial because the stereo does come on. So yeah, this is literally running and driving. I have to say again, a massive thank you to the guys at Going Green for just taking a bit of time just to sort of prepare this for me. Obviously I can do a reasonable amount of stuff on them, but yeah, just kind of getting me one together with some reasonable batteries and finding me one that's going to be reliable. Obviously the later ones with AC motors and stuff are more in demand, but yeah, absolutely good fun. And there's quite a community that keep these going. Not sure I really like to drive it too much on the road because it's not wonderful in an accident, but just for sort of off-road, kind of like farm use, absolutely perfect. So yeah, any comments, drop them below. Thank you for watching. Please do subscribe if you haven't done so, and I will catch you later. Cheers.